Oh, yes, sir. We're on. We're live.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this November 2nd meeting of the Planning Board. Please take note of exits around the room in case of emergency, and now join us as we re-offer our fealty to the American flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is a workshop. The applicants are seeking to do lot line revisions on a 3-lot subdivision, and you're up. Just as a reminder to most of the board, we reviewed this initial subdivision. It's a 3-lot, so under our code it's a minor lot subdivision. This is on Reservoir Road. And I believe that there are 4 of us who were part of the original approval. In addition, I recall walking the site several times with Ms. Dexter and Mr. Bickford.
That's a moment. I'm sorry, what?
I can't read them otherwise, yeah.
Right.
Hello. This is the one, yeah.
Yeah.
Get better. You three of them.
But they're putting in the open space. Where did that one, is it the 3 to 10 line?
See the little dots?
So they're including.
Okay. Good evening, everyone.
Nice to have you back.
It's been a while. Ernie Martin from KC Engineering and Jensen Tasker, also from KC Engineering. The sketch plan that we brought in this evening, some of you may recall, I see some familiar faces here. This was a subdivision that was approved back, I believe, in 08 or 09. And it was a 3-lot subdivision located on Reservoir Road, and if you recall, at that time, we had 3 separate lots. We had one in this area, one in this area, and one over in this area, but it was served by a common driveway. Are you hearing me?
If you can stand on this side, the director, our director, is saying that the camera can't pick up this for our television viewing audience.
You're shooting off of that camera.
I'm on TV.
Yes, and believe it or not, people actually not only watch it on live, they actually watch it off our website too, on YouTube.
So at the time we did that 3-lot subdivision, the lots were served by a common driveway, and which we're showing in this area right here. This is the plan that was approved back in the day. So you had a common driveway that went in that served each of these lots. Our client, Mr. Dubelski, which is Right Homes, he's a builder, and of course he developed this property, and he's had it on the market for a number of years, and of course I don't think anything he did. We've had some tough times as far as residential development and building and things of that nature. But the common response that he got from people that even showed a little bit of interest was the common driveway. They just felt that it was, people still like to have their independence. You know, it's, if everyone gets together and everyone's on the same page, it probably can work fine. But some people, many people, probably more than not, and this was the feedback he's getting, and I can certainly understand that, that the people would prefer to be on their own. So anyway, all that said, he says, is there any way that we can maybe redevelop this where we can do individual driveways? And I said, well, one thing that we have to take into account is that we're on a, we're on a curve in the road, in Reservoir Road, and I'm very concerned about, sight distances and things of that nature. And I said, and even if we can meet the sight distance, or we need to do some modification to meet the sight distance, there's going to be a lot of excavation to do that. And he says, well, I do all that. He says, I can do that. I'm not afraid to do that. He says, but I think that'll work better for me. So the sketch, so initially I said, well, let me go out and meet at the site with Walt Doyle. We did go out there and meet with him, and I believe he told me, he says, as long as you got 200 foot of sight distance, he says, I'm fine with it. At the time, he was just recovering from an operation, right. So we didn't jump in the woods and back and forth and all that, but I did, in fact, meet him out at the site. So what we did is, back to the drawing boards, went back there, and actually Jensen went ahead and did sight distance evaluation here. I think, and Jensen jump in and correct me if I'm mistaken, I believe she analyzed this for 250-foot sight distance in both left and right direction, and that would be for each of the driveways. So that was one thing that we're very concerned with, and we feel that we can do that. The other thing is we wanted to take, if you recall from the other plan I just had, one of the house sites was up in here. That's remaining. The other one was over in here. That one we're going to take this house site and move it down here, just move it closer to the road, just to try to minimize disturbance and minimize just the cost of a long driveway. So essentially the sketch plan that we've shown, still 3 lots. These house sites would remain in the same location. This lot over here would have to have a new well placement and septic design, and 3 independent driveways. I think another requirement of property in the zone is you have to have a certain percentage of land in like a conservation or not to disturb.
Permanently conserved open space.
Open space, and I think 30% is the requirement, and I believe our plan shows that. Essentially, it's around the outside of the property and extending down here, similar to what we had before, although not exactly the same.
Anything else?
Ernie, isn't there a lot of Central Hudson in there somewhere?
Yes, actually.
It runs right through the middle.
I should have mentioned that. Right through the middle, there is an easement that shoots right through the property, right through the center of the property. It's a Central Hudson easement. It's 100-foot wide. Although right up in front here, you can see there's a little rectangular piece here that is owned in fee by Central Hudson. So the rest of this from here on out is an easement.
Let me start with our consultants as usual. Ms. Axelson, any comments?
Yeah, I mean, actually, the first thing that I noticed when I saw the proposed layout, I thought, why are they doing 3 driveways when they could share? And then I went and looked back at the 2007 plan, and sure enough, there were the shared driveways. So Pete and I had, a discussion, and of course, what you mentioned before, the fact that we would want to see the site distance proved out. The other thing is that the Greenbelt District really discourages intensive rock removal and removal of natural resources. So I think we're going to need some detail on that, how much is going to be removed. And if you could highlight that in the, the short EAF, and in maybe with notation on the plan, maybe some kind of a small report that will discuss rock removal. I think we should have driveway profiles because, of course, this is on a curve. So there are many factors that make the proposed 2 new points of access hazardous. Being on that curve, and then we can all see a knoll coming down to the road. It looks like at some point there was an old wood road that went through there, but it's too narrow. It's like...
That is correct. Matter of fact, one of the driveways follows that old, I'll call it an old wood road.
Right.
I'm not sure what its purpose was, but we did keep one of the driveways on that. But obviously, that's going to need to be worked in the field for it to, to function properly. And going along with some of the comments that you mentioned, we already have done, even though this is only a sketch plan, and when we met with, we did meet with Tad on this. I failed to mention that, but we did meet with her in a pre-application meeting. But we did, we have done, in addition to site distance, we have done grading, and we have done profiles for the driveway, so we certainly can.
Okay, yeah, that was the other concern, was
Also, I think
profiles
when
for
we
driveway.
do our analysis, maybe we can do is do a disturbance for the first plan that was previously approved, and we can maybe do a disturbance for this, just to give you some.
It would be helpful to have the comparison. I understand this is marginal land, it's one of these chunks of land that's been left, and it just seemed so logical to have the shared driveway at a spot on the road where it curves so that you can look in two directions, and this thing's out on a little bump in the opposite direction. So I know what it's like to live on a dangerous driveway, and so it concerns me. I know it's just two driveways, but all the same. And then I think we need a little bit more clarity on the plan to be specific about. I could see where the lot line change was after I looked at it for a while, but if you could label that, and then, you know, kind of pull together all the zoning stuff, and I would include in there the calculation of open space land, if you could just put all the zoning stuff together. And I don't know if you can find a different way of shading the open space so it's a little more obvious, and maybe present the board with an illustration that shows the old open space configuration in the new, so that they can at least get a picture of whether it's comparable. Those are my generalized comments. So,
Thank you. Ms. Polidoro?
Is the open space area, those are the little polka dots, so it kind of bends around the lot. So when the planning board approved this several years back, they did their seeker review based on the open space being in a particular location and preserving certain features. So right off the bat, this raises the issue of whether seeker needs to be reopened, as the open space may not be as protective as the first location. And then a technical issue is that I see portions of the Central Hudson easement are being included in the open space areas. And I don't think that's appropriate, because Central Hudson routinely goes through and clear cuts, and they can do whatever they want in that easement area. So those should definitely be removed. That can't count towards it.
You know, I don't recall, was that included on our original, or was that excluded? I guess we can check
In your
on that.
original, the open space area, if you flip your map over, it's along the left-hand side.
Right. Correct.
I think we excluded it from the Central Hudson.
Yeah.
Because it's along like the property line of Marshall Drive and Utter.
Yeah, well, I'll have to check that. I've forgotten, to be honest with you.
Okay. So then the other issue still has to do with the open space and the common driveway. I would like to see any deeds or the common driveway easement that has already been filed, and the deeds with the open space restriction, because we'll have to have them amended as part of this if the board approves it.
Understand.
I guess I'm just going to add to your seeker comment that one of the reasons I think that we should open seeker again has to do with the rock removal and vegetation removal for the driveways.
Thank you. Let me start to my left. Mrs. Kane, comments?
I was not part of the planning board when you originally filed, so I just actually have a general question that maybe our consultants can answer. Is how, when you have a requirement of open space in perpetuity on a privately owned piece of land, how is that enforceable?
So, unfortunately, the only way to enforce this type of perpetuity is to do a deed restriction with third-party enforcement rights to the town.
Okay.
And because the original owner still owns all 3 lots, he could amend it, but that's why I want to see the agreement, to see if the town has to sign off on it and what the restriction says.
Okay.
This doesn't look like a piece of land that any land trust would take, because there's no, no public access, and it's pretty small.
So Victoria and Tori have not been through subdivision process yet, and we're all a bit rusty because we haven't had them in a long time, I admit straight out. But Victoria, to your point, the purpose for the open space clause is to allow freedom of movement for animals, basically,
Right.
endangered, threatened, rare species, but also raccoons, deer, et cetera. So when we identify areas for open space, we're supposed to take a look at the sort of the conservation value, meaning because they can't put structures, remove trees, et cetera. Now, some parcels of a sufficient size, the open space is pretty big, like that was proposed. And in some cases, land trusts will take that over, like Winnicke, someone else, Dutchess Land Conservancy, et cetera. If they find conservation value, then they're the ones who enforce that. But otherwise, it's for something this size, it's typical that it would be the town would have to do the enforcement along through there. And we would probably only really know if a neighbor told us, because, and if I recall correctly, one of the reasons why we chose this was so that we could, or allowed this to be used was because, again, our code in the Greenbelt, we're supposed to preserve and protect natural features of the landscape. And there's where the rock outcrops are, I walked the site, and like I said, and Mr. Bickford and I did at the time. So it's a disturbed site because of Central Hudson's easement running through it. They periodically clear it, and Mr. Martin's correct, they own this little tab at the very front of it. When you drive by, you can see pretty easily where this is. So anyway, good question, though.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Murphy?
I'd like to make sure you show the easement and also how contiguous the open space is going to be, because we do try to connect them where we can.
Okay.
All right?
You mean on
I just kind of like to get a better idea of,
The dots are not obvious.
Yeah,
When
they're
you're-
clear on a plat, which will be the first page of the full plan. Yeah.
If I could just interject, one of the things, I think what we're looking at on this plat is an existing tree line, and we'll want to see the proposed.
It's been the board's practice for the last 10 years to have limits of construction disturbance shown. And at first, we had some pushback from individuals until after we approved their subdivisions and they got realtors. The realtors were like, oh, this is great, you're going to keep some trees. Because believe it or not, people don't really like to buy houses with flattened out, no landscape, no trees, no nothing. It gives them more of a sense of protection. It's also quieter, et cetera, to have the natural buffering. Mr. Groninger.
What's the total length of the Lot 1 driveway? Do you know, end to end?
I think it's about 1,000 feet.
Okay, I don't think that would pose a problem. In other words, the fire department doesn't like these super long driveways unless there's a passing zone. So that's just something you need to keep in mind. We need to double check that.
we could implement some bump offs.
They have the little bump offs.
Yeah. As it stands right now, of course, you're just showing it as whatever your nominal width is.
That was a good catch. Ms. Dexter?
That's okay.
You can use this one.
That's okay, I've got this. What is the lot size now of the one that's now close to the road? The one that you moved from all the way in the back?
The large,
Yeah.
the large
Are the lot
black
sizes still the same?
Approximately.
2.8. You want to move that line, right?
Oh, you're speaking of this one?
Yes, the one that was moved to the road. 2.8? Is,
Obviously, this is going to.
Microphone, microphone,
yeah, you, okay.
microphone, Ernie.
And
About 2.3.
and from the other side.
Maybe
So it shrunk from what to what?
it says 4.6 for lot 3.
It was 4.6. No?
Well, it says existing area 4.6, proposed area 4.6. Lot 1 says existing area 4.8, proposed 5.4, and Lot 2 says existing 3.6, proposed 3.1. So Lot 2 is shrinking, and Lot 1 is increasing.
Is that on here, Jensen?
Yeah, all those numbers are on there. So they're all right here.
Oh,
But
I
these
see.
are the
Okay.
numbers with this line staying here. You want to move it to here.
Right.
Ernst, if you could just point out the area that's being conveyed from one lot to the other?
It's right down here.
No, I'm talking about what's Lot 3 now? With Lot 3?
Our Lot
That
3.
got moved all the way from the
It
back
was-
to the front?
It was 4.7,
Yeah, yeah.
okay, and now it is,
Yeah, it hasn't moved.
It's the same.
wait a minute.
That's okay.
I think the layout has changed, but the lot acreage has not.
Yeah, they didn't change
We
anything.
didn't. I thought we were going to make it. Okay. I have to retract what I said earlier.
Okay,
I think after we submitted this, we said, you
I
know,
think this house
why
should be further back.
put a rear portion on this lot? We're going to take this and make this one big lot. So this lot would be smaller. So that was
Okay.
someone after the fact, but the plan we submitted did not show it that way.
thank
showed it-
you,
it
because
showed it
the
the way it is right
words
now.
are not, we're not matching what I'm
no,
seeing.
No,
Yeah,
good.
So on the plan, so on the plan that you have, lot 3 hasn't changed at all. But
Right.
after we submitted it, we talked about bringing this lot
Okay.
line to match this stone wall that's right here. And then that would make lot 3 about 2.8
Okay.
acres, and then add this back part onto lot 1.
Okay, which would make the effort of going back 1,000 feet maybe a little bit more worth it, because it's a
'Cause
larger,
you have more land,
bigger
yeah.
lot.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right, well, so to that point, I'm kind of curious. If you're trying to make this more saleable and easier to do, why don't you just do 2 lots? Make this one in the front, and forget about destroying rock outcrops and doing all this stuff and putting a house right next to I don't think no one's going to want to be right next to the Central Hudson easement, I don't think. The guy in the back, if it's an estate lot, he could have the whole front portion, and that's all his. And you can have, I'm going to guess, the one in the front's going to sell like immediately, and then the estate lot would sell probably close after, without having to do all that.
Well, I would have to talk to our client.
Well, I mean, it just, you
Yeah,
know, I
no,
mean. for
I
just-
hear you.
Yeah. I'm looking at that going, that's a lot of work to do a lot line realignment, to make it more saleable. If you want it more saleable, make it more saleable.
Basically, I'm just going to go ahead and chime in quickly and say I agree with that assessment. I had added to when I sent you the list of things you might hear tonight. I added, I talk to realtors all the time because it's something I feel like I need to know. And, this is not the only pre-approved subdivision that's failing to sell lots. We have lots of small ones and different ones. As I also wrote, we have one where there's been a model home up for 2 years now. It's right up on 59-9G, but just off 9. It's called Nori Estates, and that hasn't sold either. And it's already a model home built. What's tending to sell are things that are closer inside because we have a huge inventory still of existing housing stock on the market. So it's things that are a little bit closer in, and also things that are very well priced. There was just a sale of a 5-bedroom on Stoutenburg, which is it's a nice neighborhood, very nice neighborhood. Lots of realtors, doctors live there. It's got 3 acres, I think, a pool, and it backs onto a pond. It went for, I believe, like $425, $450. In 2006, that would have sold for
Twice.
easily. So, and it's got a full finished basement. It's just, I'm just pointing out that I think that if it's saleability, I do understand the difficulty of persuading someone who's the first one in about the shared driveway. I know in other towns, certainly out in the Hamptons, you see that all the time, but they've already been established, and so it's just a matter of, sharing the costs of working that out with somebody about with the plowing costs and maintenance. I know it's harder, but I think that if it's really sellability, I also mentioned that, I think that it's hard to sell houses that are going to be really close to power lines. There's still the suspicion out on Long Island that it causes cancer. And Ann's point, I hadn't thought about it till she said it, but if you could divide I know it means there's less density and less sales, but if he's sitting there holding on to it for forever, and considering what the expense of this would be, I think it actually might make some sense to discuss that with him, because Ann's right, that estate, you can just keep trees up to the easement and still have your own private area on the left, and on the right, you could keep up your trees, and you may not, use all of your property in the rear, but you'd be close to the road, and I think you can still stay away from basically the electrical lines, because I think that's what's the hardest
And
thing
you
there.
follow the old Woodlot Road, I should say.
Right, you're following a path that's already kind of been,
Yeah.
and really, if they wanted, if they then wanted to subdivide their property, then they might do the shared driveway thing and just pop something off to the side, or, but
Well, I can't speak for him. I thought he was going to be here tonight. He's not, but we'll talk to him.
No.
But I
that's
hear,
okay.
I mean, I hear his pain and all that other,
Yeah.
you know, but that looks like a lot of work to have your own driveway and really kind of just mess with the landscape, big time. I mean, that's going to be a huge project.
Mhm.
That's going to be a huge project.
Thank you. Ms. DiNapoli?
Besides being a huge project, it's also going to be extremely expensive. I thank my colleague, Ms. Dexter, for pointing out something that I think hopefully your client could hear. I think she makes an excellent point, and everything that was said was really said to help sell these lots and get some houses up there and get him some economic relief. Thank you.
So you got my email, I take it, that about what you would hear. The only thing I will add then, because the public hasn't heard it, is that the stormwater regulations have changed since the initial approval, so that'll have to be worked through what the new ones are. I don't think that's a big deal. I pointed out that you'd need to work with Mr. Superintendent Doyle as well as Mr. Sotero on the site distance issue, and you've already started that process. Thank you, I didn't know that. And then the limits of construction disturbance, as I said, should be shown. We've discussed the relocation of the open space, and that there are probably some waivers that you'll need to request. Like I said, you're supposed to show, I believe I'm rusty on subdivision law. I used to know it really well, but I think that there are requirements to show, say, significant trees that are above 18-inch diameter breast height. You want request a waiver of those things, so just to get that in, because we need to have it for the record. And then for just the general edification of the board, the process of subdivisions is we first accept for sketch, then there's a preliminary approval, and then final approval. And our board policy has been that we do, prior boards used to do sketch pretty quickly, and then they'd have lots of changes that would kind of lengthen the process. So what we try to do is front load it. So when we wait until we are really sure that there's probably not going to be a lot of major changes left before we accept for sketch. It's good that way because it means you can go pretty quickly through the rest of the process. So I know we're not ready yet for sketch because, as sharp-eyed Ms. Dexter also pointed out, and you guys sort of admitted or said, what we're seeing right here is not really what you're proposing, and it's also, you may want to, it sounds like you're going to pursue the idea of maybe doing a real true reconfiguration and make it 2 lots in terms of helping sellability. I would definitely encourage the owner to talk to some realtors if he hasn't done that already. He may have, maybe he has someone, a realtor working on this, but I think it would help to hear from a professional, particularly with maybe the idea of 2 and a true really estate lot, not where you go by, that is an estate lot in the rear, but you still go by a house and you see another driveway right next to you. I know a lot of people from the city who buy estates and they really like their privacy, and that's not going to be as private as what you may think, at least initially. So,
Can I ask a quick question before we close that out? If you were to get rid of the driveway and that second lot that goes through the rock outcroppings and everything, and if you would they still have to go through seeker again?
Yes, because the first driveway presumably needs some blasting as well. He'll have to provide the information on it.
Right.
And also the movement of the open space. We'd have to
Okay.
pull the prior approvals and see what the board reviewed and what it considered when it made its determination.
Okay.
So it may not change, but you
Right.
have to review it
I
to
was going
determine
to say,
that.
when there are changes, we always re-look at seeker. Normally we reaffirm if it's minor changes. These are changes because of the topography alteration that would be a little bit higher than that. And by the way, for anybody watching and just for you guys, we're not saying every rock needs to be protected. It's really more of a matter of how significant it is and what kind of blasting you're going to do, what the removal of it would entail, et cetera.
And Ernie already said he would be providing us with some
Right.
comparisons, so that would be helpful.
I think so too, because that's good for seeker. So,
I really would, unless there's no alternatives, I would really would encourage or say to our client and represent to the board that we'd not blast, that we chip, you know. Blasting gets it gets a little more involved.
I know. I live on a lot of rock where I live, and someone blasted a few years ago, and 4 people said they had basement complaints. This must be the owner.
This is the owner.
Come on in.
This is Stanley Zubelski.
Give me Mr. Zabelski. That's quite all right, don't worry.
That's okay.
So, if you'd like me to recap what that we're talking about, actually, you were more eloquent. Take the microphone back.
No, I was just noticing that with the change of the shift of Lot 3, all the way from the back now closer to the road, you've made the Lot 1 much bigger, so that's becomes a different type of property. And the lot that's close to the road may become your most favorite property first. Might just, fly right off the shelf. But I'm worried about Lot 2 because you have to do all this, what appears to be an awful lot of rock removal and landscape changing in order to park a house right next to the power lines or the Central Hudson easement there. And I'm not sure that would make that any more saleable by it having its own driveway. So I was just...
Lot 2 is the one in the middle.
The middle?
The one in the middle.
So she was talking to move the house closer to...
Well...
No, I go ahead.
One of the just suggestions or just observations is that, and I kind of gave him the background, how you had it on the market, been difficult to sell, and that one of the comments that keep coming back from people that are interested is the common driveway part of it, and that's what led us to go to the 3 separate driveways. They thought that maybe, and we have to talk about it, but maybe rather than do 3 lots, do 2, and take the one in the middle, take that out, okay, and just have the big estate lot to the rear and the smaller lot or the over to the right, and then it'd be less rock to remove and less disturbance and all that. So
I really don't care about the work because I do the work myself. I have the equipment, so it doesn't bother to me. But I pay for 10 years almost $100,000 the taxes, and where's the money? I already paid the taxes for this year, and where's the money? Is nobody gonna give it me back? I was thinking to change for 2 lots, but I'm losing for each lot $40,000 already for the lot. So it's the money I pay for the subdivision. I will be glad to move the house for the long driveway closer to this lot 2.
Well, I don't think they. I don't think they have a problem. They don't have a problem with the long driveways.
No, I was just kind of saying that if you're looking for saleability, if you're trying to actually move these, I don't think Lot 2 becomes more saleable. I don't think, I'm just saying from my perspective, I'm only speaking for myself. It just seems a lot of work.
If you worry about the work, I'm not worried about the work.
Okay, it's not the work, it's the amount of natural features that have to be removed in order to place a house next to power lines.
And
I don't see, if I'm looking for a lot around here, there are a lot of lots available. So it was a suggestion.
Yeah, I tell you, I'm driving and I see the houses, this is not the big power line. I seen the big power line. If you were going on the Route 9 to the Columbia County, is the house next to the real big power line. And the people, they live. If you go into the city, the people live under the power line. If you go into Taconic Park, where you can look at close to there was the Route 15 or the Clinton Corners. The house is almost under the power line. And the people, they don't care where they live. But the problem is, I paid that wrong. I tried to change. I'll be, happy to change for the driveways, Well, I don't care about the work. The work is not the issue. The issue is just get separate driveway.
Right, and basically, your definition of work and my definition of work are different. My definition is I'm seeing a lot of natural features, which people might actually find desirable. You may make that estate lot now less desirable because you're removing a lot of natural features.
Yeah, this is not contentious.
No,
It's just, I'll be honest with you, there are houses under power lines, but they're lower priced. And not huge ones either, they're still lower priced. As I mentioned earlier before you arrived, people on Long Island believe that it causes breast cancer to live under electrical lines. This is, at any rate, we were thinking that maybe that's part of why these are not selling, but also I pointed out, I do with a lot of realtors, talk to them a lot around here to keep tabs, and there's a lot of lots that are for sale that aren't moving because we don't, countywide, we're not creating huge career sustainable jobs right now. IBM continues to lay off people, and we luckily have some growth in the medical care field right now. But that's part of why houses are staying on the market longer, even in Hyde Park, other locations too. So, but this isn't for you, you don't have to decide tonight. This was just to initiate a discussion. So I was concluding by saying that the next step would be to go for us to approve for a sketch, and you're not quite ready there yet, and we also need some more information. And Ms. Axelson, are you going to issue a brief memo?
Yeah, I wanted to hear from the planning board tonight, and then I will, issue a memo. Some of the issues I've already discussed, detailing the rock removal, giving us driveway profiles. And, when Pete and I looked at this, he said the reason that there was the shared driveway in the first place had to do with site distance and the optimum location for access. And he said, as far as I know, nothing's changed. So we need justification for why these two new driveways will still be safe. And details about rock removal, vegetation removal for seeker and all that.
Well, like I said, we've done the site distance analysis, and I know that meets it. But we'll also, in line with the disturbance, we'll take a look at what we had before and what we have now, and this might be more intense in area. It might be less, but we'll go through that. And I know for sure, just from the standpoint of grades and things like that, obviously when we're dealing with the rock there, we didn't have the abrupt contour changes on the first plan regarding the road anyway that we would have with this, and we realize that.
Right. So once you have the additional information submitted, we'll get you back on the agenda. Because this was just an introduction tonight, so to speak.
No, they haven't made any decision. We need to talk about it. We'll talk about
there's no decision made whatsoever right now.
They haven't said no, but they said, just a suggestion. So
throwing some ideas out, that's all.
So anyway, as soon as you get everything into us, like I said, we'll schedule for the agenda. And just on a sort of personal note, it's always interesting to have female engineers. There's not a lot in your profession, so congratulations, great. I'm delighted to see you here tonight. I think we've had exactly two.
No,
that's
three.
Three in all these years, so it's nice.
We have 3 in our office.
Way to go.
We're progressing.
No, I'm serious.
That's awesome.
One of our head engineers, along with Ernie, is actually a woman.
Okay.
Nancy, you remember Nancy Clark?
So that was the other one?
She's one of them.
She's one of the three.
Yolanda's the other one.
And yes.
Nancy's been with us for a little over a year.
Okay.
No, 2 years.
Yeah,
2 years.
it's fantastic.
So,
And
then
you-
there's Jensen, and there's another young engineer as well, female engineer.
Well,
And then we have, another 10.
Obviously, the rest of the office.
Yeah.
But still, I think it's great that we're making strides in STEM fields, so to speak, as we call it. So good for you to go through to engineering school. Anyway, it's a pleasure seeing you again,
Yeah.
and we'll see you ahead soon.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the Arbors Fire rebuild. Just to remind everyone, we had a recommendation from the zoning administrator to waive a public hearing, which we've done. And this will be a conditional approval we'll be considering tonight. They cleaned up most of the paperwork, but there's still a couple of things that they haven't done yet, but I believe we're prepared to take action. Any comments from our consultants or the board on this application?
No.
And again, for the residents, this was a unit that burnt down, and the residents have been out of their homes basically for, I believe, about 8 months. So I wish them luck in getting this built quickly so they can get back in out of, motels where I guess they've been staying. So who has this file?
That'd be me.
Thank you, Chan.
Resolution number 1645A, whereas. Now therefore, be resolved that the planning board approves the site plan for the project and authorizes the chair or his authorized designee to sign the site plan after compliance with the following conditions. Number 1, payment of all fees and escrow. Number 2, revision of zoning table on map of survey to include the existing/proposed condition. 3, revision of all pages of the site plan to include a common revision date. Bound copies of the site plan, which include the topographic survey as cover page and which include all other pages of the site plan, shall be provided to the planning board. Looking for a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. The next item on the agenda would be a site plan waiver for the Rothmans. Aha, someone's here.
I'm not a Rothman.
I know both of them quite well.
I am representing them.
Okay.
My name is Peter Clark. I am Clark Construction Services, and I am representing Lorraine and Evan Rothman.
So I wondered what you were here for. I thought maybe the Arbors. I thought maybe you were working there.
No.
So it's nice that you came. I always tell people that they don't have to wait. If I'd known you, we pretty much.
It's exciting for me. I have a degree in architecture. I enjoy this.
Actually, we enjoy it too, believe it or not. So the Rothmans are in a statewide area of scenic significance. However, and they have a lovely antique home. Or vintage. It's a gorgeous house. Lorraine is, of course, the librarian for Statsburg. And this porch is just a repair, and it's not visible from the historic site, which gives it rights in the statewide area of scenic significance. There we are. Anyway, who has this file?
I have that.
Thank you.
November 2nd, 2016, Resolution 16-47, whereas an application requesting a waiver of site plan has been made to the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board by Peter Clark of Clark Construction Services, Inc., for Lorraine Meyerson and even Rothman for property located at 62 Old Post Road, Hyde Park, New York. And whereas the application is to obtain approval for the reconstruction of the front stairs, replacement of the porch decking, and the addition of a section of deck railing on the side of the home in the Historic Overlay District. Whereas, now therefore be it resolved that the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board hereby waives site plan requirements for the file entitled Rothman Porch Repair regarding the specific request as submitted in the building permit application, site information dated 9/7/16. Do I have a second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Nice to meet you. Good luck with the project.
Thank you very much.
Any further business? Making a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, and thank you again, Media Committee. Thank you, David, for coming up from the basement tonight to do the taping.